It's a little known fact, toy companies love harnessing the awesome power of TV for marketing purposes. Restrictions on marketing directly to children have been cut back immensely over the past few decades, and many of these companies, such as Hasbro, Mattel, and Tonka, have actually commissioned animation studios to produce cartoons based solely around product lines they planned on selling. And we here at Channel Frederator are taking a look at some of the best toy-centric shows these networks had to offer from the 1980s up to now. So put on your jammies, grab a bowl of cereal, and get ready to watch 9 cartoons made just to sell toys, like it's Saturday morning all over again. Number 9. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. The history of the He-Man franchise is one of intrigue and debate. Many claim Mattel ripped the entire idea off of the popular action film Conan the Barbarian in an attempt to make a more kid-friendly version of the franchise. There was controversy, followed by a lawsuit. However, the court ruled in favor of Mattel, and He-Man lives on. Truth be told, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe was an algorithm for success at the time. It was supposedly based on the very diverse Star Wars action figures that Mattel turned down for production, probably regretting that now. To reclaim their losses, Mattel created their own original franchise directly inspired by those Star Wars toys, and the popular animated series was created on a whim during the pitch meeting between Mattel's marketing director, Mark Ellis, and Toys R Us. Since the board was unenthused by the idea, Mark fibbed and said an hour-long special was already on the way to help promote the toys, and thus the animated series was born. But this was easier said than done. Mark had turned to his friends at Filmation, the studio behind Fat Albert, to animate He-Man once Hanna-Barbera passed on the opportunity. Filmation was happy to help, but they still couldn't find a network willing to greenlight the show for a Saturday morning time slot. That's when Filmation's president, Lou Scheimer, suggested they syndicate the first season of He-Man for TV stations to air 5 days a week during the afternoon lull. To everyone's surprise, this new model was met with such success that it gained 9 billion viewers, grossed $2 billion in toy sales, spawned a live-action feature, oddly with no relation to the animated series, and even caused a riot when it was taken off air due to low ratings. Number 8. The Care Bears. The Care Bears are one of the few instances in which an entire multimedia franchise was produced around a best-selling greeting card. That's right, our colorful, caring friends started out as a mere byproduct of the American Greetings Corporation LLC back in 1981, following the success of their first major franchise, Strawberry Shortcake. 2 years after their debut in 1983, the company decided to sell plush toys of the popular picture-tummied characters, the success of which resulted in 2 TV specials, a feature film, and eventually an entire series in 1985, which ran for about a year before it fell into syndication. Over 40 million Care Bears were sold between the years of 1983 to 1987, and American Greetings sold over 70 million of their cards over the span of a decade. All in all, merch sales reached $2 billion throughout the 80s, making the Care Bears one of the most successful toy lines of the time. Although success dwindled during the 90s, the series was revamped and relaunched 3 times, the most recent being the 2007 relaunch, which revived popularity in the franchise. Number 7. G.I. Joe. The G.I. Joe toy line was created as the first action figure for boys, and was considered a rival product for Mattel's Barbie back in 1964. As history would have it, Hasbro wasn't sold on revamping the franchise once sales dwindled, but visionary Bob Prupis, head of development at Hasbro, believed in the product. So Bob formed a marketing team, who then formed a groundbreaking idea. The idea was to market G.I. Joe through the comic books, and then market the comic books through broadcast advertising. Since comics weren't as heavily regulated by the FCC as cartoons were at the time, Bob and his team met with the president of Marvel Comics, and a beautiful relationship formed. Needless to say, the merger had Hasbro excited, and the comics became a smashing success for the toy line. In 1984, due to deregulations put in place by the Reagan administration, the FCC suddenly allowed toy companies to produce half-hour advertisements, aka cartoons, based solely on toy lines. One of the first and most domineering brands during this time was none other than Hasbro with G.I. Joe. In 1983 and 84, 2 miniseries were produced by Marvel and Sunbow that completely dominated the Saturday morning cartoon lineup. 2 years later, G.I. Joe premiered its very own animated series, and the rest is history. Number 6. TMNT. I'm sure dedicated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fans know that the series actually originated as a comic book created in 1983 by 2 struggling artists, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. The entire idea started as a joke sketch, followed by the constant riffing off of each other's design until the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were officially born. The plot, for those of you who don't know, was a nod to Marvel's Daredevil. According to the Turtles' origin story, the very same canister of ooze that blinded Matt Murdock also mutated the Turtles as a result of the incident. There's also a correlation between certain character names. Matt Murdock's sensei, Stick, inspired the Turtle sensei, Splinter. figure, and of course the infamous Foot Clan was based off of the hand. While the origins of this franchise are rooted more in parody and was also geared more towards a mature audience, the popular 80s-90s cartoon was a creation of Playmates Toys. They first tested the waters with a 5-part miniseries, which debuted in 1987. It wasn't an immediate success, as ratings dwindled until about the 3rd showing. Afterwards, Playmates ordered more episodes and even hired some of the big-name performers to voice the principal cast, such as Rob Paulsen of Animaniacs fame and Townsend Coleman of The Tick. The classic cartoon stayed on air for about 8 years, totaling 188 episodes, and is currently going strong after countless reboots, video games, musicals, sitcoms, feature films, toys, and yes, even more comic books. The success was so staggering that other toy companies tried to create their own versions of anthropomorphic heroes, such as Mattel's Street Sharks or Ace's Stone Protectors, but none could compete with the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Number 5. My Little Pony. Whether we are talking about the 1983 series or the 2010 reboot, one fact remains the same. My Little Pony is a merchandise masterpiece. The franchise originated as a toy line by Hasbro back in '81, but it was called My Pretty Pony at the time. They only had one model. It was a 10-inch tall plastic brown palomino. The original creator, Bonnie Zackerly, envisioned more realistic-looking ponies before Hasbro suggested a few tweaks. 2 years later, the smaller, softer, brightly colored versions were released under the title we know today, My Little Pony. The first TV special aired a year later, and was produced by Hasbro's own animation studio, Sunbow, partnered with Marvel, which were the top co-creators of Saturday morning cartoons at the time. By 1985, 2 My Little Pony specials had been released, which led to the feature film. This was Marvel's first ever domestic theatrical release. Surprise, surprise, the series managed to stay somewhat relevant through TV syndication and direct-to-DVD releases. Then in 2009, Hasbro decided to reboot the franchise with Friendship is Magic, created by Lauren Faust, a writer from the Powerpuff Girls and Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. She maintained creative control, but Hasbro oversaw the production and elements that had the potential to be toys. So yes, even the new awesome version of the show was made simply to sell toys. Number 4. Pokemon. With a catchphrase like "gotta catch 'em all," do we really need to say more? This glorious Nintendo trademark was created by Satoshi Tajiri in 1995 after he was inspired by his weird hobby, bug collecting. As it turns out, Tajiri was also a big gamer, and this eventually led him to creating and developing arcade-style games for NES, Game Boy, and even Sega. Then, pure genius hit, and Tajiri put together a pitch for Nintendo to sell his new idea, Pocket Monsters Red and Green. The game was simple, just collect, battle, and trade mini-monsters. Thus, the Pokemon franchise was born, which by the way is the second biggest gaming franchise ever, right behind Super Mario Bros. Of course. The popular anime made its US debut in 1998, making Ash Ketchum and Pikachu the official faces of the franchise. The series boosted merch sales in every form of media imaginable. This included 3 theatrical releases, endless toys, clothing lines, card games, and even ice cream. We all love those candy-cheeked Pikachu pops. Of course, the cartoon is still going strong too, with the latest addition to the series, Sun and Moon, having premiered on Disney XD in 2016. Oh, and not to mention the worldwide sensation Pokemon Go, an augmented reality app co-developed with Niantic, which earned Nintendo a whopping $9 billion just 5 days after its release. So yeah, Nintendo still got it. Number 3. Bionicle. Bionicle was the brainchild of LEGO in an attempt to reach an all-new generation of kids after the company had reported taking a loss back in 1997. The LEGO company knew it was time for a change, so they shook things up by adding stories to their sets, and they tested the waters under a surefire name, Star Wars. The LEGO Star Wars line was such a hit, they decided to release their own original theme, and it too would include an in-depth backstory to engage the new generation. In 2001, Bionicle flew off the shelves as quickly as they hit them. They eventually became known as the longest-lasting original LEGO theme, with a lifespan of 9 years and a stifling number of dedicated followers. Of course, this didn't happen based on the toys alone. Oh no, there were officially licensed chronicles, meaning books, emphasis on the plural. Graphic novels came later, and so did 4 surprisingly lucrative direct-to-DVD animated films, starting in 2003. The success of the franchise continued well into 2010, when it was discontinued. No! Then, fans rejoiced when the Bionicles returned with an all-new toy line in 2015. To help promote the new toy line, an animated series was released on Netflix just that following year. Unfortunately, LEGO canceled the toy line after the 2016 releases, and claimed that the final episodes on Netflix will put an end to any speculation regarding the future of the franchise. So, I guess the fans will just have to watch to find out. Number 2. Bratz. In 2001, the anti-Barbie was born, Bratz fashion dolls. They were designed with an all-new sexy sense of style and fiery attitude, featuring trendy names like Chloe, Jade, Sasha, and Yasmin. They wear lots of glittery makeup, have iconic doe-like eyes, and luscious glossed lips. Yup, these 10-inch dolls are pure plastic sass. They were created by MGA Entertainment Inc., another big American toy company that was established during the late 70s. They produced a Bratz animated series in 2004, which aired on local stations until the ratings grew tremendously high, landing at a spot on Cartoon Network. Since then, there's been a non-stop slew of direct-to-DVD films, web series, video games, and even soundtracks to promote the franchise. There was also a live-action Bratz film produced by Lionsgate, which received theatrical release. The Bratz franchise is still going strong, having countless spin-off lines, including Bratz Babies, Bratz Boys, and Bratzillas. Plus, the new addition to the original lineup, a fifth girl by the name of Rhea, was introduced in 2015. Heck, with a new development like that, it's very possible we haven't seen the last of the Bratz cartoons. Number 1. Transformers. Okay, don't act too surprised. You know Transformers had to make the list. Why? Because it's still making Hasbro money. Transformers is hands down the most successful franchise based on a toy line in the history of toys and cartoons. There's even another sequel currently on the big screen, Transformers: The Last Knight, the official 5th edition to the Michael Bay movie franchise. Still, even before the live-action films, Transformers was a pretty massive success. It all started in 1984 when Hasbro bought the rights to two popular Japanese toy lines, Takara's Diaclone and Microman. They presented the new line to their animation studio and said, "Make a story." Now, here's a fun fact. It was a selling point between writers at the time that Hasbro didn't mind if the cartoons were slightly edgy or just a tad violent. They wanted something that could captivate their audience, and that's how the war on Cybertron really began. The two Takara toy lines would forever be referred to as the Decepticons and Autobots, from the moment Marvel's editor-in-chief, Jim Shooter, pitched the idea of warring robots from an alien planet known as the Transformers. A miniseries premiered, which led to 2 seasons and an animated feature film that received a theatrical release and starred some pretty big names too, like Orson Welles as Unicron. The entire franchise was a genius marketing ploy because each season introduced a new generation of toys to collect, not to mention a comic book series by Marvel, but to the kids, it was so much more than that. While Hasbro's interests might have been in money, what they made were millions of unforgettable childhood memories. And yes, billion-dollar franchises. We'll call it good times for all. And there you have it. I'm Joe, and thanks for watching 9 cartoons made just to sell toys. Which toys did you have? What was your favorite of all the shows? Let us know in the comment section below. And don't forget to click the bell icon to become part of the notification squad. We have videos dropping every day, so make sure to subscribe, because remember, Frederator loves you.